I'd like to welcome you all to our panel discussion on why considering applying for a PhD program and how to prepare for it. As a first step, I'd like to introduce the panelists, and I do this in the order of their presentations. That's why I have to start with myself. My name is Jan Reemans, Director of the PhD program at Union Theological Seminary, also visiting professor for critical theory and social analysis, and also teacher of 2 modern languages, German and French, here at Union. The next speaker will be Gary Dorian, Reinhold Niebuhr Professor of Social Ethics, who currently teaches the Black Social Gospel from the Civil War to 1940, and a class on economics, ecology, and ecofeminism, and who has just published his most recent book so far, American Democratic Socialism. Then it is the turn. Recording stopped? Yes. Should I stop as well?
No, please continue.
Okay. Then it is the turn of Aliu Niang, Professor of New Testament. He is an expert in biblical and post-colonial theologies, and he connects his biblical studies with the studies of West African traditional religions. Then we have 2 student representatives, namely Ban Khan, the left side, 3rd-year PhD student in systematic theology, and Dörte Mohme, 2nd-year doctoral student in New Testament, and also my assistant and coordinator of PhD students. Last but not least, Vanessa Hutchinson, Vice President of Admissions and Financial Aid. She can advise you exactly how to put together your application materials, how to submit everything on time, which is very important, and how the financial aid process works at Union. So every panelist will talk no longer than 8 minutes, preferably less, so that we are able to have a discussion as soon as possible. I'd like to briefly address 2 issues. Namely, first, the consequences that ought to be drawn from the COVID-19 pandemic and the dire situation in the academic labor market. And second, some specifics of the doctoral program at Union Theological Seminary. To start with the first point, we all know that the situation on the academic labor market is pretty gloomy. This was already the case before the COVID-19 pandemic hit, and then the situation was exacerbated by the COVID-19 crisis, and it will probably not get better once the pandemic will finally and hopefully subside. We have done a little research about the job placements of our PhD graduates, and the result is that most graduates landed in non-tenured teaching jobs of different kinds, namely 65%, 20% found a job outside the academia, and only a small fraction of 10% got a tenure or tenure track position so far. So this does, of course, not mean that a PhD is useless today. It is still acknowledged as a kind of valuable symbolic capital that might be very helpful for getting a job you desire. But the PhD needs to be separated from the outdated and illusory expectation that most of PhD graduates become tenured professors. During the COVID-19 crisis, many universities decided to suspend their PhD program for the next academic year. Union has decided to not follow this path, but we have already reduced the numbers of PhD students and therefore increase the standards and make it more difficult to get in. So I'd like to suggest that you draw 2 conclusions. First, think hard and in a realistic way about your vocational goals. What do you want with a PhD? How do you expect it to help you in what you want in life? Are you so passionate about scholarship that you invest it even without a guaranteed professional outcome? You might have the dream to become a tenured professor. Keep it warm, but at the same time work on possible other options. And don't consider these options to be less worthy or even a failure. Even though you might be interested in doing your PhD at Union Theological Seminary because you rightly consider it to be the best place in the world to do this, it would be very unwise to put your eggs in one basket. The basket at Union Theological Seminary is really a very small one. That's why our panel today is not just dealing with the PhD program at Union Theological Seminary, but with PhD applications in general. Now, the second point I'd like to briefly talk about, namely the doctoral program at Union Theological Seminary. So, in accordance to Union's profile as a progressive, social justice-oriented and interdenominational institution, we have a very ambitious interdisciplinary PhD program. So usually our doctoral students have a major field and a minor field, with a major and a minor advisor. You should demonstrate your interdisciplinary interests in your application. Our PhD program is divided into 4 periods, namely coursework, 2 academic years, then 4 comprehensive exams within about 1 year. Then you write your dissertation proposal. And as soon as this is approved by the field, you can focus on writing your dissertation, APD, anything but dissertation. And if you are able to pull this off within about 1.5 years, you can graduate after 5 years and get through the doctoral program without usually any additional debt. The basic funding for every PhD student is for 4 years. But since 2018, PhD students have the possibility to apply for a 5th year of funding if they show good progress in their academic studies and have the support of the advisor. That's what counts, the support of the advisor. So presuming that you are accepted into the PhD program and start in the fall 22, and presuming that you are able to graduate after 5 years, that is in May 2027, you can get through the PhD program without accumulating any debt. And that's the goal, or at least one of the goals, next to our high standard academic goals that you become an excellent scholar who is able to change the world for the better. I stop on this a little bit optimistic note and turn over to Professor Gary Verrier.
Thanks, Jan. Well, good evening, friends. I'm going to talk about a few things to consider if you are considering applying for a doctorate here or anywhere. Firstly, the first thing just to say about this is that if indeed you are considering it, this is not a time in your life to be shy. I say this, I'm quite sensitive on this point since I myself am a profoundly shy, even pathologically shy person. And yet this is just not a time when you can be that way, because you'll just be roadkill if you do. You've got to talk to people who are your current professors, talk to them about, what it might be like, and, indicate that you're considering it. And that also goes beyond just the place that you are in. Any place that you are considering, certainly once it gets down to a short list where it's a place you're strongly considering, as hard as this is, you really need to venture into that world and send them an e-message or something to particular people and ask, could we have a conversation about, about my possible candidacy at your institution? When I came to Union and I sat in meetings where people would say, oh, I don't think she really cares that much. She never contacted me. I nearly fell off my chair. I thought, are you kidding me? I mean, when I was whatever in my mid-20s, I would never have contacted any of these great faculty people at Union. I mean, just what that takes, it would never have happened. And I said that, and they said, well, you wouldn't have gotten in, would you? And that really is sort of a part of how it goes now. So that's just the first thing to realize. This is a point when you really need to sort of make connections with people. Secondly, there is the whole issue of deciding a field and then a project. Yes, you need to get clear about a field, and not just a field, but a project within a field. And here at Union, we even want you to have 2 fields, but we're weird. Everyone else just wants you to have 1. And here again, there's just something to know about. Up till this point in your academic career, if you say to people, oh, I've got so many interests, I just have no idea which one to choose. You know, it's just so hard for me because I'm interested in so many things. That's a statement that has worked for you up till now. The academics love it. Admissions departments just love it when you say that kind of thing. But now, if you're applying for a PhD somewhere, anywhere, that's a response that will kill you, right? That at this point, you've got to be clear about a field and a project within that field, what your project is. Especially now that everyone's taking just a few people, because everyone just wants people who are already pretty far along on the road and they know who they are and what they want to do. They don't want to have to sort of take care of anybody anymore. They want you to be sort of, you know, along a certain kind of road, and that's what shows in the application. And whether you know your field and you know your project. That not taking care of, Mark, I didn't mean you don't go for a mentor. I'm leaving that for LU to talk about, because that's exactly what he's going to talk about. That's a crucial thing. But the game has changed in terms of who's going to get in the door with regard to this very thing. You do sort of need not only to be fairly clear about your field, but also what your project is. What is it that keeps you up and fires you and makes you want to devote next 5 years of your life to a PhD program? And that's kind of seeing that fire and seeing what it is going to be important every place you apply. There are not going to be exceptions to that. And then lastly, with regard to that, as you are explaining sort of what that is and get fairly good at it, there is the issue of the fit, of demonstrating it. All of these people all these schools you're applying to, if it's 5 schools, it's 6 schools, whatever it is, some people applied up to 12 or 13 schools. But in every case, it's going to be a little different, because you got to demonstrate, be able to talk about the fit between who you are, what you want to do, what field you are in, and what that place is. Who's at that place? And don't say something like, oh, you know, so-and-so told me about you. That will not help, right? You need to say something that shows a certain personal acquaintance with who it is that you are pitching yourself to. To say, I know about your work, and yes, I want to be able to work with you on this. And be able to say it just that concretely. Those are the ones that fly. Whereas a lot of applications are just kind of self-negating because they haven't followed these maxims. I'm going to make one last point, and I've talked fast just to be able to get here, because this is a little bit of a story, and yet this is something I want all of you to kind of hold in your heart and mind that might get you past this year. And that is, I have seen this whole process change profoundly in one way since we went down to these small numbers of people getting into programs. It used to be, and I mean not that long ago, when if you applied to a place and you didn't get in, you really shouldn't apply to that place again, because people do remember, you know, last year it gets very intense. And we remember and then people will say, oh, well, we already considered her last year, right? Didn't get in. And that would kill a person for getting in somewhere at a given place. So you need to apply other places if you apply in the second go round. That has completely changed. It's exactly the opposite now. People are now getting in coming back to the same place that they didn't get into the year before and are now getting in. In fact, when I taught at Harvard on the side for 3 years, just because they were killing social ethics and I just couldn't bear it. So there I am hauling myself to Cambridge every week for 3 years. And one of my students there he applied to 4 places. He all wanted to be in the area of Nashville. We identified them. He applied to all 4. He went over 4. And I told him, you apply to those same 4 places next year. And I gave him this little sense about how things have changed. And the next year he applied the same 4 places and he went 4 for 4. He got into all 4 of the places. He applied and is now a doctoral student at Vanderbilt. So this is just one of those little homely stories of mine that I want you to kind of bear in mind in case you get through this year and it doesn't turn out as you would want or hope. Chances are your best places to even come back that next year are those very same places, because now you're coming back with even more. That is, you're showing a certain determination, a certain commitment to the work, to the place, to the subject that is now showing in a way that does in fact make an impression in the environment that we're in now. All right, now my friend Aliu is going to talk about finding a mentor.
Good evening, friends. So, as you think about applying for a PhD, think of something at your early stage, specifically for those of you starting now. Or if you have already 1 year, or you have a semester ahead of you and planning to apply. Here is what I am thinking about, and that is cultivate a relationship on campus with your professors. It's crucial. Get to know your profs and get to talk to them about what you're interested in. So as you do so, talk also to your advisor, because advisor and advisee relationship is crucial. If your advisor knows you and you know the things you would like to talk to your advisor about, the advisor might help you begin to conceptualize what you would like to do. And thus, the advisor will help you shape your portfolio. But also, do talk to other professors, because we are all doing something that is enhancing the life of the community as well as the intellectual pursuit. We may be doing different things, but those different things are actually those we're trying to cultivate in your journey. So as you do so, as you establish that relationship, something that I would like for you to think about is your academic performance is crucial. And talk to your professors about anything you think it's very difficult for you as you journey toward thinking about an application for your PhD. So, the other thing that I want you to think about, and something that I thought about myself as an international student studying in America and having to adjust to culture and having to also adjust to the kind of academic inquiry that we find in American institutions, very different from my West African context. So, try to think of, again, we will have overlaps here with Dr. Dorian. And the overlap will be this. Think about 3 main questions and talk to your advisors about, or if you have an advisor and you may have another professor you talk to, But also I encourage you, try to talk to as many as you can, but also talk to your advisor. So first, your field of interest. Your field of interest is crucial because you don't want to go halfway and change your mind. Guess what? It happened to me. I studied as a Hebrew Bible PhD candidate, and I went all the way to writing my dissertation, and I shifted to New Testament. Please don't do that. Yes, don't do that, and because it takes time, and you readjust to another kind of discipline, dealing with Greek, classical Greek. Please don't do it. Now, talk to your advisor with what you're thinking about your field. And your advisor also will probably say, okay, since you're thinking about this, who do you want to study with? Which institution are you thinking about? Are you wanting to apply to Union, Harvard, Yale? If you do, who are you wanting to be your mentor? Think about that, because mentor and mentee relationship is like a family. You have to cultivate that relationship and begin to think about it, because your mentor will do the best they can. If the relationship is great, they will consider you as the next scholar who will build beyond the mentor. And think about that. And the other one will be, try to see if you can go to SBL or AAR, contact the prof you want to study with and say, I'm interested in your work. Can we meet at SBL? And please do me a favor. Once you find someone you want to study with, find out whatever they wrote. Try to read and understand how they're thinking. And as you do that, you're ready to meet them, and then you have something to talk to them about. I read your work. Here is what you're doing. I'm interested, and I want you to be my mentor. I want to apply to your school. So SBL can do that for you, or you can send an email. But please, if the person you wanted to contact didn't respond, don't give up. Send another email. Just try anything, because some of us will receive tons of emails, and sometimes, like myself, I will confess, I will respond, put it in my draft box, and then thinking I responded already. Just to find out 3 weeks later, I did not send this email. So please be patient with us, and know that sometimes that's going to happen. Don't give up. Now, the other thing I would like to talk about is this. I'm sure you want a good letter of recommendation, right? If you want a good letter of recommendation, and you take New Testament intro with me, and that's all you took, and you ask me to write a letter of recommendation for you, that's the only thing I know. So I will be limited, but I will use all the documents you gave me, and I will read them to write a letter of recommendation. But what you don't want is this. I have so-and-so in one class, and I know them in this context. Now you begin to see that classroom relationship and try to know your profs and know your mentors, it's crucial. And this is what, so knowing your advisors as well as your prof, and then a letter of recommendation, there's a relationship. Now, suppose you took a class with Dr. Raymond, intro, and then you take another class, upper level. Dr. Raymond will know now, not only at your introductory level, but also at a level where you begin to produce meaning instead of introductory learning. And then you take another class, a third, and you do well, that's a solid letter of recommendation. But also, that's not the only thing. So as you do so, what you want to avoid, if you know your teachers and know those who will be recommending you, then here is what's going to happen. Once they open the application, they will look at the application, and some way there will be maybe several questions, and one of them might be this: how long did you know the student? Or the other one might say, here are options. Did you observe this from the student you're recommending? Now imagine the relationship is just the classroom interaction and no conversation about your interests. The prof might say, not observed. That's to be avoided. So you can begin to be proactive. That's what I'm trying to say. So being proactive will be very helpful, and also just trust yourself in what you do. Trust yourself. And also trust that the profs that you know, your advisors, want the best for you. And last thing is this: if you are a prayer warrior, pray, 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 because of the difficulty to get into an institution. And also pray for your friends, pray for those recommending you, because as you do so, whoever called you, whatever divine power called you, that prayer will count. And thank you so much.
Thank you. The next one is Anne or Dutch. Who wants to go first?
Yes. I'm Dutch Mome. I'm a second year PhD student at Union in New Testament. So I got in 2 years ago. And one big advice I think I would give for this phase of applying for a PhD is get other people who also apply and make like a cohort with them, a community, where you read each other's resumes and each other's statement of purpose, and interview them. Like, for example, if you know another person that you're working with who also wants to apply, you know, oh, you did this internship, why don't you mention it in your resume? Or you ask them, why do you write this in your statement of purpose? You have to make this sentence more clear, or something like this. Really see them not as your like enemies in fighting for a place, but as your allies and as a community in trying to make the best applications that are there in the world. And for me, that really helped me a lot, because also I'm a shy person, and some things I might not have even thought about mentioning. And then other people would tell me, you have to write more, like you have to write how brilliant you are in order to convince the committees. So work together with others. And then also having a relationship with the professors that you want to apply with is really good and important. And also I would recommend to submit the scholarly paper that is needed in the application in the area where you want to apply for. If you want to apply in New Testament, submit the scholarly paper that is written in that area. So the professors who are in that area see your work in that area and not in something else that they don't know so much about or care so much about. That is something I would suggest. And then another thing is to really start early with your application. If you want recommendations and you want good recommendations, you have to give the professors time to write them. And maybe also like email back and forth about what they write and maybe reminding them of what you took with them and what you wrote and stuff like that. You have to give them time. And also if you need transcripts from other institutions, especially as an international student, that took a long time to get them. So do that as early as possible, those two things. Yeah, I think that's for my advices for application. And then so far, my program has been really interesting. I can recommend it to anybody, not because of wonderful job chances afterwards or career options, but just for being in the program and for the time it gives you to study more in depth, really focus on something that interests you and not just studying broadly introductory courses, but doing guided readings about books that you always wanted to read, or really having time with professors to discuss and interview them. That's something a PhD can give you that is a unique chance. And then maybe Ban will share her experience.
Hi, my name is Ban, and I came to Union. I got in 2019, but outside of the Union institutions. And so I just want to share briefly in 3 points. The first of all is please be gentle and be generous with yourself, with ourselves, because it's so stressful. And I'm originally from Burma, and then with my application process, I applied 4 institutions, and I did not think what would happen if I did not get in. So it's just everything, whatever I can do the best, I put it in the application process. But at the same time, there's so many factors that impact the application process. Like, for example, I applied to BU, School of Theology, but that semester, that year, 2019, is the faculty whom I want to work was in this category, because PhD was designed to closely work with the faculty, the advisor, they will be the one that to vote, okay, I am willing to work with this candidate or this person. Then those kind of factors really kind of impact on our applications process. So there's so many factors. For example, I really agree with what they are saying, try to reach out to faculty. But at the same time, there are some faculty, some professors who don't want to meet with a student or don't want to meet with Zoom or prior to the admission. But that also means different process. If you don't hear back from anything from the professor whom you are reaching out that you really want to work with, then I think it doesn't mean that they're not interested in your process or in your project, but it means they are kind of a different process, just different dealing with that. So to be recognized that and to be respect and also be generous, be gentle with ourselves, putting so much hard work that I recognize that every student or every applicant is putting in that. And the second thing is in the process of the project, the statement of purpose or study of interest is a glue to everything. And to work that is sharing with people who are in the program as well. For example, I'm also willing to share with my experience as well. Then if saying out loud that study of interest with friends who are in the program or with other people, then it's just making more clear that what you want to work with. And that also kind of really prepare with when we meet with professor, then they will know that, okay, you are really committed to it and you have a clear statement of purpose or study of interest. And that also prepare having a conversation with faculty and also some institution will kind of like interview us that in the application process. So in that, it's also kind of like really helpful that to share with in the writing professor or with other people to work with that. And so it just like that will also really helpful that they will remind friends will remind us that things that we don't include that is like really important. And so it's sharing with people and conversation that will really help. And finally will be my kind of like experience so far in the program. Sometimes PhD program seems like so big, but at the same time, there's like so many tedious work, detailed work that has to kind of like finish. And so we have like commitment and courage and determination. Yeah, thank you.
So I just want to thank everyone for all of the wonderful advice, because we always get a lot of questions and admissions about the process, and it's always helpful to hear from both faculty and current students about their experience actually walking through the process. So I'll talk a little bit about the application requirements, but keep it brief because everything is on our website, and then give some tips, I think, in terms of what you can do to be a good applicant to the program, because I think it's not only do you want to pay attention to your personal statement and doing all of the networking you need to do to be admitted, but it's important to be a good applicant and actually follow the process in a timely manner. Because, and I think this is true at Union, but other schools, it's such a competitive process that even small delays, most schools have pretty tight deadlines. And so if materials are late, that can actually impact your ability to be considered. So everyone's talked about the personal statement, the statement of study focus, and the scholarly paper, so I won't talk about that. At Union, we also require a resume and 3 letters of reference. We will send applications forward if we're missing maybe one of the letters. That might impact, obviously, the quality of your application, but we would consider it complete to send forward. But if none of the recommendations are available for an applicant, that can't be sent to the faculty. So it is important for you to make sure that you're in touch with your recommenders and that they're sending it to the office on time, whether it's to Union or to other schools. It's the applicant's, for most schools, and it's the same at Union, it's the applicant's responsibility to reach out to recommenders and remind them to submit their materials. And so you should call the admissions office at every school just to find out their policy. At Union, we have a grace period for recommendations only. So we will give about 3 to 5 days for recommendation letters to get in. That's not for the application to get in, just for the recommendation letter from the faculty members. Transcripts, we need transcripts from all of your post-secondary programs. They need to be legible, have your name on it, the school's name on it, your major, all of your classes. So you'll want to make sure that, especially for a PhD application, that there's a good sense of your academic history and progress that the faculty can review to get a sense of what you've studied. At Union, we have for test scores, the GRE is optional for this year. We implemented a policy last year with COVID because of the difficulty of getting and sitting for exams. It's optional. So students are welcome to submit it. If you have the score, you can send them, if you send them to Union, we will upload them to your application. And if you have a recent exam that you've taken, you can just self-report the score in the application and then send it along, and then we'll receive it and add it to your application, but it's not required for you to apply to the program. The TOEFL, I would say we have a stronger preference for the TOEFL. If you're an international student and you have not studied at an institution where the language is in English, I would recommend you calling the Office of Admissions if you don't have a TOEFL score. We do have lower cost options like Duolingo and other options, but you should just call our office if you have questions and you're not able to take the TOEFL, because we have had a lot of students who might need to submit a language exam but have had difficulty sitting for the exam. And we typically will work with students on a one-on-one basis to see what they can do and what might work for the application. So we might even consult with faculty, ask what they need, but we're always willing to talk through questions like that when it comes to test scores. So don't be afraid to contact admissions and ask questions about things like that. So I do want to give a couple of sort of good practices and application tips. And so number one, and this is really vital, get your application in on time. That means on the day of the deadline. You know, this is what it is for unions, so we don't accept any late applications at all. And the only exception I would say is, again, you know, sometimes a faculty member might have, and we have a grace period for the faculty to submit their recommendation, because we have a little bit of time where we're verifying the applications. And if the application, if the recommendation comes in while we're doing that verification process, it will be included. We won't, you know, we don't hold it back, but we can't include late applications. So it's really important to be on time. And I think Bon mentioned requesting the transcripts early. That is really critical, because we also cannot send forward an application if it's missing a transcript. And you know, a missing transcript really would put someone out of the running. So even if you submitted the application, but it was lacking the appropriate transcript, or it wasn't readable, we might not get it in time for, you know, the faculty may have already made a decision by the time, if it's coming internationally and it takes some, you know, a month, you typically don't have a month to get it in with the doctoral process. So it really is important to try to start as soon as possible. For the self-reported scores, as I mentioned, you self-report in the application and then send the scores to union. We will upload it for you. And you know, the only other thing I will say, and this is maybe for some of the union students that are in the room, you also do need to request your transcripts to have it sent to the admissions office. So you should make sure to be in touch with the registrar. Admissions offices typically can't request transcripts from our registrar without an academic purpose. So we do value your privacy. And so, you know, what it usually takes is a call, and then they can send it to us to add to your application, but just make sure you take the time to take that final step. And, you know, our deadline this year, as it typically is December 1st. You can find this information on the website. We notify students typically the first week of February. So that Friday, I don't have the exact date, but it will be the first week of February, and we do allow for school visits. So any admitted students, we typically have a budget for students to visit, and I'm hopeful with COVID that we will be able to accommodate visitors this spring, and then students will make a final decision in April. So there's plenty of time once you actually get your application submitted and you get a decision to actually consider union. Union is the right.
Thank you, everyone.
And maybe I'll turn it to Carmen. I know we have questions and you're going to moderate the next section.
Yes, so the first question is an easy one. How many spots are available?
There are two. Yep.
2.
Does Union Theological Seminary belong to a consortium or affiliated with the university?
Yes, we do.
What are you talking about? No, but union is a self-standing thing.
Yes.
It's not, union is not a way to apply to Columbia or some other place. So all these, if that's what their question refers to, it's, yes, it's its own thing.
I thought it meant that we have special relationships to other neighboring universities with joint programs. Is that what it means?
It could mean both. There was not
Yes,
any.
if it goes to the question of can you take courses from other places, or even is that even part of the practice at Union, that doctoral students would quite typically end up doing some of their coursework or draw upon the resources of Columbia or Fordham or Drew or so on? Certainly the answer to that is yes.
Right.
That's important, actually.
Is there support for members of religious minorities in terms of diversity and admission?
Well, I mean, Union is a program where, I mean, we're a school and our ethos is around social justice. And so we always look at, you know, questions of diversity, equity, and inclusion in our admissions practice. So that would certainly be the case. We are a holistic reviewer. I mean, I would say the faculty do a completely holistic review of the application. So within that context, the answer would be yes. We don't have, for doctoral admissions, for example, specific scholarships focused around, you know, specific groups. But I think, you know, I can very comfortably say within our admissions practices, we do really think about students that are coming from religious minorities or ethnic minorities.
In that, which departments will be considered for the 2 spots available?
Not predetermined. The short answer. The process is like this. The different fields choose their 1-2 candidates, and then that goes to the faculty. Then there are negotiations back and forth, different criteria. What field gets how many, or this is not predetermined.
And I just want to add, I mean, you know, when you're a student thinking about the PhD process, this is typical for many schools. And Bon actually mentioned the fact that, you know, it sometimes may have just so happen that the faculty who you would have the best fit with is on sabbatical. And those kind of incidental things can impact your ability to be admitted. So it's important to remember that it's not always about your merit as a candidate. I think there are always excellent candidates who aren't admitted because, you know, maybe, you know, a particular field isn't admitting a doctoral student this year because they admitted someone last year, or someone is on sabbatical. And so, you know, it's been my experience just working in admissions at different schools that those kinds of things are common, and we don't really know until the process starts because it is a negotiation. So the important thing for you to do is to really research the school, research the faculty, and to be able to tell your story, but then also approach the process with some understanding that there's some flexibility is required as part of the process.
We have an application question that says, what is the difference between the personal statement and the statement of study? Is the latter considered a summary or short version of the former? Or should it be quite different and have different information? So the difference between the statement of study and the personal statement.
Go ahead, Vanessa.
Well, I'm wondering, you know, I would be interested in hearing how you look at the difference. Just as faculty reviewing the applications, what you look for.
Well, certainly that the statement of the study, that is something that is always keenly looked at. I mean, that's sort of defining the person and the relation to the institution and the whole question about the fit. That's the document that we're looking at to answer those really crucial questions. Union is one of the few places that actually breaks this up so that you have all the applicants are needing to do 2 of these things, and this question comes up for a lot of applicants. Well, then what's the other one about? But there is a kind of broader sense of the person that's at least being asked for there. We do in fact get a lot of applicants who just decide, oh no, they just want the same thing twice, and really just give it to us twice. But we also will get people who realize, no, they actually care about, you know, who you are, and want some broader sense of where you've come from, and you know what your aspirations are and the like, in a way that isn't just this discipline specific thing. So that at least states the ideal, and I think it's how it tends to come out in the application process.
I think personal statement is like intellectual autobiography with what is that the question, specific question. It's like the first thing and kind of like a glue to that, and the faculty will see that. And I think the study of interest will be kind of like more kind of like fleshing out what is that question and study. That is like my understanding, and sometimes with the application form that they kind of like write it down what is the study of interest or focus, then that will kind of like flush study of area of interest a little bit more. As a personal statement is like weave with your story, like intellectual biography that you tell.
Okay, we have time for 2 more questions. Would Union consider accepting students who are interested in fields that little to no faculty specialize in, if that field is very underrepresented in academia, i.e. Pacific Islander religions?
Specific what?
Pacific Islander religions.
If the faculty is of the opinion that the application is pretty good, but we don't have anyone who is able to teach it, that might mean that this is unfortunately not a fit. And that is obviously not the fault of the applicants, but the weakness of the institution. But sometimes we have to make that decision. We are not able to really teach that because we don't have an expert. That's a question of honesty.
Keeping the privacy of a student just that private, can you share a story about a PhD student that touched your heart?
All of them.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yeah.
It's all of them. Why? Because, as I said earlier, you cultivate a relationship which is almost like a family. And so that's how important it is to know who you want to study with. And it's a crucial relationship. And to the earlier question, those of us who do empire critical and post-colonial studies might have something to do with Islander studies. And in fact, I was part of that discussion at SBL, and a book is published about rumination on Islanders. How does an Islander, or how should Islanders be thinking about interpreting the biblical text across the ocean? So that was the question that I had that discussion at SBL, and a book actually, you can Google and you will see the discussion on Islander and inland debates on biblical studies.
Yes, I think I want to give that all of them answer too, because I know when I walk into a class in the fall, anytime I get one of our first year doctoral students in a class, I just light up. And it's not like I'm trying to, it just happens. And the reason, of course, is that previous February, we were in a very intense discussion over here, all of us, about all these people. And so by the time we've gotten through this process, it's been grueling for us, intense, but we also learned a lot, and we all just feel like we already have such an investment then in who these students are when they come. And with regard to that, I think I want to say that I said something right away when I first spoke about talking to your professors about your own sort of application. But one of the things that your own professors can be resources for is this question about where else to apply. We're in the field. We know all these places. We know these people who are out there. And that can be invaluable just to try to get down to what it might be, 4 or 5 or 6 places that you might go for, because these will in fact be somewhat different applications as you are demonstrating the fit between what you want to do and what each of these places is. And so the whole business about literally doing research on what the schools and programs are out there, it'd be hard to exaggerate how important that is to this process. And one variable, the last thing I'll say, or even one variable about that study we haven't really said anything about yet, is that different places have different processes. So it can be profoundly different as to what kind of process they go through. I mean, I'm at Columbia too, and it couldn't be more different over there. than that 3-step program that, you know, Jan walked you through a little while ago, that we have here. And with regard to that, last thing I'll say, since I'm just thinking about the other things we haven't said here, the money situation is very different. Some places like us, you know, we got full fellowships, and we wouldn't dream, we never charged tuition to a doctoral program here. Even when we were poor and had too many students, we had lousy fellowships or no fellowships or just a couple, but at least we didn't charge it. But this is very much a layered thing, because there's some places that, yes, they, you know, no tuition and a very good fellowship. And then some places are, well, they're not charging tuition, but there are no fellowships, or there might be one out of who they're bringing. And some places have no fellowships at all, and maybe still with tuition off. In some places, you're still paying tuition to get to that, into that doctoral program. So you might as well learn all this, you know, as you're going in. That is, every place you study, you might as well get some sense of your own, what it is you could tolerate, what, you know, preferences, what you could settle for, all that kind of thing. The money situation is as different as all the other things.
So thank everybody for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for listening, and good luck for your applications wherever you apply to. And to quote Bahn, be generous to yourself and to others. Okay, bye. Faculty leave the room.
Our student-only space will be starting in about 1 minute, so you can stay there and talk to current PhD students.